Hi, I'm Ron Chennai, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Qualitative Report. And every year in January, we bring researchers from around the world at our annual conference. So what I'd like to do today is to talk to you a little bit about the conference, a little bit about what makes for a successful presentation at the conference, and maybe a little bit about things that you might not want to do during your presentation. So as qualitative researchers, one of the things that you know is very important is context. And so if you've never been to our conference before, some of your assumptions may not fit. For example, if you're a psychologist and you present at a psychology conference, you may present in a particular way because everyone there is a psychologist and they're interested in looking at some aspect of DSM, some diagnosis, and even using terms like that. Those are things that they might know at psychology but might not know anyplace else. We are a qualitative research conference, and so people come to the conference to learn about qualitative research. And that's the number one thing you should keep in mind, is that people want to learn from you. You've conducted a study, you've found really interesting results, you've used some aspect of qualitative data analysis or some method, and you really have a gift to share with the audience. And that's what we really want you to emphasize is, how did you think as a qualitative researcher? Because, well, that's why we call it a qualitative research conference. That's what people come for. So that's the number one thing to remember. So let me talk about a few things that you can think about as you're putting your presentation together, a few things to think about when you're presenting, and hopefully you'll find this valuable to any presentation that you do. Okay? So the first thing is time management, is that your presentation is 20 minutes long, and so you really need to think and to practice about that. Now you're going to have time for question and answer and so forth. And so we really want this to be engaging. We want, if you do a great job, your audience members will want to ask you questions. So give them time to do that. The other thing is to remember is that probably you're going to be in the same time slot with two other presenters, maybe three. And so you need to be good about sharing your time. So we'll have people in the room that will give you tips as far as timing is concerned, but you need to sort of practice that too. So practicing is a good thing. And so everyone's very excited about what they want to talk about, but you have to sort of practice and not only manage your time, but manage your content. And so one of the things we always say is let your abstract be your guide. The abstract, as you know, is typically 5 sentences that organize, if you're presenting a paper that's the results of a qualitative research study, the first sentence would be, what is your problem or what is your focus? The second sentence might be a bit about the context and so what, why is this an important study to have done? The third sentence would be, what is your design, what is your method, who your participants are. Fourth sentence would be your results, and then the fifth sentence would be, what were the implications of that research? Well, that's the same way that you would structure your presentation. So in a perfect world, you'd say, okay, 20 minutes, 5 sentences, do the math, that's how you would divide up your time. But what we ask you to do, if you're going to spend more time on anything, we ask that you spend time on describing your method. So what a lot of people run into trouble is about context. And so when I was doing this presentation, I was wondering, how much should I tell you about myself? Should you know that I was born here, that my parents did this? Well, that's really interesting, but it's really not germane to telling you about how to be a better qualitative researcher in doing presentations. So me telling you who I am and the editor of the journal, and then we do a conference, I felt that was sufficient to let you know who I am and how that relates to what I'm talking about here. So typically, people get into trouble where all of a sudden they start telling you, I'm from this university, oh, hey, go Badgers. We don't need to know that. I mean, it's great that you do that, but get right into your study. So the first thing is here I'm here to tell you about, that's your first sentence of your abstract. Get right into that. And go through. Certainly telling a little bit about yourself is important, but probably you would talk a lot about yourself when you're talking about who you are as a researcher, what relationship you have to your topic, because that's important. If you're a psychologist and you're interviewing your own patients, we should know that because that might affect what they say and what they don't say when you're interviewing them. So time management is important, but content management is also important. So focus on the qualitative aspects of your study. Certainly want to hear what you produced from your study. Now, that would be typical of a paper where you're presenting the results of a study. The other type of paper we get is you're presenting something about qualitative research, how to interview, how to use a technology, a software to do your analysis. And there, it's still the same way. What is the opportunity? What can they learn from your study? or learn from your innovation, learn from your suggestions, your advice, your consultation, but then get into it. Talking too much about what you're going to talk about and not spending enough time actually presenting your work, that can really frustrate your participants, your audience members. So most people, besides speaking, they also use some sort of graphical device, typically a PowerPoint presentation. And that's another thing that we ask you to think about. Probably 3/4 of our presentations are papers that have already been published in the qualitative report or will soon be published. If that's the case, it's really important that you tell your participants that the paper is online. Because your paper is online, after the presentation, people can always go and read it. During the presentation, you really want to have a balance of how much text you have on your slides versus maybe having certain images that capture what you're talking about. There's all kinds of studies about PowerPoint presentations that if you have too much text on your slide, your audience members, they don't know whether to read the slide or to listen to you. And that kind of causes, the fancy term is cognitive dissonance, and it can be very confusing. So typically, if I'm doing presentations nowadays, I may have a couple of key words, maybe only the key headings of my talk to help people know I'm now talking about the method, and then maybe have a picture that also represents something about my method. If I'm doing grounded theory, maybe I put a cover of Charmaz's book up there that says grounded theory. So they get an image about grounded theory, but they know to listen to me to talk about how I use grounded theory. So really think about that. There's nothing worse than putting up a PowerPoint slide. The text is too small. It's full of typos. You've got to manage your brand. And if you're sloppy on your PowerPoint presentations, they really start wondering how good was your study. So take a look at your slides, look at them, but less text is better. So the time management, the content management. The third area of management is people management. Typically, there could be one researcher presenting his or her research. That works out pretty good. But sometimes there are multiple authors on the paper and only one person comes to the conference. We really don't need to know who's not there. You certainly say this is the presentation and here are all the authors. But if you were just the person doing the data analysis, you really need to work with your co-researchers to understand the completeness of the study, because it's very discouraging to walk in. We actually had a presentation last year, and the person said, the principal investigator is not here, the lead author is not here. Basically, I just helped them with data analysis, and I'm going to kind of run through the slides. Well, maybe they should have canceled the presentation, but I'm glad that he came. He did a decent job with it, but you need to be prepared. So regardless of whether all the authors are there, the one who's presenting really needs to understand what's being presented. So again, it comes back to content. Understand your content. The rest will take care of itself. So we've talked about the audience. We've talked about the context. We've talked about the management. I guess the last thing would be is that the question and answer part of the presentation is that the rooms are not too unlike this. You'll have a place where you'll sit and you'll talk. So what we ask is that as you enter the question and answer part of it, to move to the side of the room away from the podium and then address your audience over here. What this does, it gives the other presenter time then to go up and to start doing their presentation. Getting there a little bit early, putting your slides up on the desktop is a good thing to do, but by moving over, that gives your fellow presenters time to set up, and then but be mindful of your time. And you'll always have a chance. We have wonderful breakout periods. We have times to have lunch with people, to network and so forth, and that's a big part of the conference. So don't feel that you have to do all of that during the slot where your presentation is. Get to know people, connect with them, and I think that will make a better presentation for you, for your other fellow presenters, and then for the overall conference experience. So if you're an author and your paper has been accepted, certainly we can be of help to you. If you are a first-time presenter, or if you haven't submitted your presentation, your proposal, or your paper to the journal, we'll be reaching out to you and asking if we can help you with the presentation. We'll also be there at the conference to work with you on that, because our goal is to make you the best presenter you can be. And that's the philosophy at the journal. We accept all kinds of authors. The paper is another matter. We need to work on that with you. So we will help you make the best presentation you can, because that's what the whole community is all about, is that here's where you can learn to be a better qualitative researcher and to be a better presenter of qualitative research. So I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions or if you have any things that you'd like to contact me with, there's two ways. You can always email me at ron, R-O-N, at nova.edu or tqr@nova.edu, and we will get back to you and help you with any of the questions that you have. I look forward to seeing you in January, and again, you know where to find me. Thanks so much.